They're the number one football team in England, Chuck.
Please comment.
They've won more than everybody else, including Manchester United.
That's the team that you support to hop onto the bandwagon because it's a feel-good time. The Liverpool's in the city of this time, but the big team is still
Manchester
Man United
as well. In the 90s, that's why Manchester.
No, but I'm saying now they're still big. They're still big,
Chuck,
and number one as well.
That's why, like. Coming through from the Freedom Day weekend where it feels like everybody got married. Did you get married, Chuck, over the weekend? Was I not invited?
No, not this weekend. But one of these good weeks. If you share and like and subscribe, it's going to be on camera.
We'll see. Might not have gotten married, and it was, of course, another long weekend. We're heading to another long weekend. Gumnandi Mzansi at the moment. Gumnandi Nala, Two UpFront. We come back, return, always here with you. My name is Jay. And other than things that did not happen, Chuck, what did happen though over the weekend, which we'll get into. How are you feeling? I see you wearing black. Are you in mourning, or is that in solidarity with a particular team?
And it was a long weekend. Yes, it really was long. Friday just didn't want to end. You know the irony of it, nah? Saturday, because my pops like passed out while we were watching the Pirates game. He is on Saturday rewatching that game right next to me, and I'm like, come on, Pops, you know the scoreline, but...
Who is a Sundowns fan, by the way?
That's not information I was offering up.
Some wisdom does not pass from fathers to sons. And this is what happens when your father goes one direction and you decide to go in another direction. But Chuck, speaking of Orlando Pirates, of course, they got knocked out in the Champions League semi-finals, 3-2 in the second leg away to Pyramids. And ahead of the start of the season, when Pirates did make it to the group stages, we said that the expectations we have for Orlando Pirates to at least get out of the group stages, get to the quarterfinals. They got there and got beyond that stage, but the nature of how they were knocked out in that second leg, right? Does it leave an overarching sense of disappointment, or are we proud of Orlando Pirates for making it to the semifinals of the Champions League this season?
And I think that's why Jose Ribeiro, when he's answering those questions from the press, he does portray both emotions, right? There's pride and there's also a sadness or disappointment in terms of how the game petered out, or how it played out, rather, I think, is more accurate. Because, Jay, we did have our predictions, and for them to have gotten to the semis is great. It's more than what we would have expected, because we thought to ourselves they're going to go for the league, they're going for the Nedbank, there's the M108, there's the Carling Cup, and all these things, and the fixture congestion as well. You think to yourself, if you're going to prioritize, if you're going to do well in the league, do well in the CAF Champions League, and to get to the semis is no small feat. It's great to have gotten there, but going to the second leg, Jay, when we've got no goals considered at home because that was 0-0, you go away where you've got the benefit of having away goals, and you score one of those goals and you're in a good position. Then you concede quickly after that, and you score another one. You're like, okay, we're cruising, and you score and you concede another one, and it's 2-2, but you're still going through to the final to concede in a third goal. All goals coming through in the same manner. That's the cross coming to the box and balls not dealt with. That is disappointing, Jay. Happy to be there, but when you look at the actual performance, it's worse than Bafana. When you think about it, you're like, Amdao, had you scored against Nigeria, we go to the finals. We played better than Nigeria. We should have gotten to the final. This one, we scored goals away, but our defense was bad. The entirety of the game, Jay. I was watching that game with my pops before he fell asleep. And I said, it looks like to me, Pirates are going to need a third goal because those crosses kept coming in and we weren't dealing with those balls very well. When we did have possession, I think the guys were tired. Eventually, I think the toll of the whole season caught up with them in that second leg because when they had the ball at feet, they weren't necessarily smart with it. And so it was back to the wall. And I think also, it's a time, Jay, to say, where is Salah? I'm just thinking about Salah. And yeah, no one man just changes the complexion of an entire game, right? But I think about it this way. No, if you don't use a Mawasa or you don't use a Mahopa, you've got a Salah up front who'll help with defensive work because he's always got energy the entirety of the game, number one. Number two, he's a very good outlet because he's so speedy. But because we had to have one of those guys, you think to yourself, maybe our shape or our pattern of play in the end of that game would have been better. But it does not negate the fact that defensively we're so poor. And so, Jay, it's more disappointment than anything because we were there. We were there within arm's reach. I struggle to see, and we'll talk about Sundowns and Al Ahly in terms of who's disappointed more. Is it Al Ahly who conceded late, or is it Pirates who were always in the lead and who just had to keep out the same threat out over and over again because it was cross after cross. So at some point you learn the pattern and you keep it out. But for 3 times in the game, we didn't learn. So Jay, disappointment. I'm proud, but disappointment is the overriding emotion.
From that game, it is disappointing, right? Because you absolutely should not score 2 goals in a competition where the away goal rule is still in play and favors you, and you lose. Because and this was the conversation, right? At the end of that match, why are Pirates still so open? Pirates were playing with a back 5, but not really. So often you saw Makula step into that defensive line because Hotto is gone. He's still ahead. I mean, there was an instance in that match towards the end of the first half where it's 2 defenders from Orlando Pirates who are left tracking back. And I'm thinking to myself, you already have the lead. So the same thing you saw Al Ahly do once they scored their goal. That's exactly what Orlando Pirates should have done. You should lock. Like it's not about how you play at that point. It's about getting the result. And that was naive. It was disappointing to see. Even the defensive shape of Orlando Pirates wasn't what it was supposed to be when they were behind the ball. It was disjointed, and there were gaps in that defensive structure. The defense as well, disappointing. I mean, time and again, crosses into the box and you cannot deal with them. And in one instance, the Mayela goal, yes. The Mayela goal where he's one man and there are 4 defenders around him and he still gets to the ball first. What are you doing? That is disappointing. Also disappointing was the reaction of the coach. Towards the end of the game, I get it, right? Orlando Pirates could not play out from the back. They could not keep the ball. They could not keep possession whatsoever because Pyramids had pushed up the defensive line and they were squeezing Pirates in their own half, right? Yeah. And yes, you need someone to put their foot on the ball to alleviate that pressure. But you don't bring on Utito and Ukabelo Dlamini both in that situation. One of them is fine because you are trying to regain some control. But ultimately what you're trying to do at that stage of the game is you are trying to hold out. You need to be in the low block and you need to just be clearing the balls. You need to keep the team out. Again, as I'm saying, 2 away goals, you were in the lead on both occasions, and then very quickly the concentration is not what it's supposed to be, and you're conceding, and you're conceding the same way. It crosses into the box, So how that game went, Chuck, both from the players and the coach, a low point in the season is disappointing. But overall, for me, it is something I think Pirates fans and Orlando Pirates, the team, the organization, should be proud. Because they did come out of nowhere to get into a group with Al Ahly, to top that group and win in Cairo as well, and then get to the semi-final stage. And when you even think about the second leg against Pyramids in Cairo, the 2 goals are scored by 2 20-year-olds. And this is what encompasses the season for Orlando Pirates for me, because Nda has been out for a majority of the season. And then while you're looking at that, Sasani, who then steps up in the absence of Nda, which I was asking the question, is Sasani there good? Because I've been on this platform to say that anyone who plays next to Nda tends to look good because of what the Nigerian does and who he is in terms of his stature, right, in that Orlando Pirates back line. But Sasani proved himself that, in and of himself, of his own merit, he's a good defender. And he had elevated himself to being the second best centre-back at Orlando Pirates. And then he goes down with injury. And now you're roping in a 19-year-old Enumbogaz. And for the season, you think Unkota has scored, I believe he scored 4, if not 5 goals in the Champions League. You've got Urele, who scored 5 goals in the Champions League and has almost as many assists. And it's a 19-year-old, it's 2 20-year-olds, and to be able to have the season where Pirates have been competing on all fronts, having won the MTN8 already in the final of the Nedbank Cup, and still chasing Sundowns in the league, and then getting to the semifinals, whereas they hadn't been back in the group stages for as long as they've been absent. I think when you take a step back, for me, when I look at the season that they've had, the campaign they've had in the Champions League, it's one that you should take pride in.
Oh, Jay. I mean, well, actually, you can feel that way. I don't, because, Jay, it's the hope and the expectation, right? We did come out of nowhere to top the group. We did perform admirably compared to the other teams in the group stages, because I think Pirates and Pyramids were the top goal scorers in that group phase. And yes, they're tough opposition. But when you get to Cairo, having not conceded goals, and yes, the team was good, the Pyramids against you, and yes, VAR did bail you out, but you go into that game having not conceded goals at home. And the history of your performances throughout the entire campaign is that you don't concede many goals, number one. Number two, you score 2 away goals. That gives you so much hope. That gives you so much belief in terms of we get into the final. See, if you lose in the final, that's fine because that's a tense affair. That's cagey. Anything can happen in a final. But when you've gotten yourself thus far, Jay, when you score goal number one, you're like, okay, with what Pyramids are looking like in the first half, they're not as good as they were at FNB. This game is for the taking. Then they equalize. Like, okay, we're a bit jittery, not quite where we are. Costa finds the second goal. You're like, okay, this one is dead and buried. We might even get a third one, but there never happens to be a chance where you get a third goal. Instead, you concede a second and a third one when you should be all hands on deck. You should be alert and say, guys, it's going to be 2-2. Let's keep them out. I agree with you, Jay, in terms of you don't pull out talent and Mbasa. Yes, he's not having the best of games in the second half at that point in time, but he's one of those key players. Hence why Pyramids scored the way they did. Yes, it's their strength, but there was no route through the middle. There was no chances created via the middle. All of those chances, as you said, with Hotto having pushed up, Van Rooyen having pushed up. I mean, the first, you always, I know you're used to my noise by now, Jay, having said, Van Rooyen is always reactive. He's never reading the game in terms of the ball's going to go to this player. Let me cover my winger or my forward. Goal number one, it's in the exact same fashion. Opotle, I don't know how is he reading the flight of that ball. He misses that one. Goal number one goes in. The second goal, they get a sub from the Pyramids who go straight into the box. They play in the cross, and no one is near him. No one is tracking him. The goal comes in. With Umayele, guys, come on. There should be at least 10 players of Paris in the box because it's that kind of situation. Read the situation. So, Jay, of those emotions, of those situations, and those moments in the game, I'm like, come on, guys. I know you're not supposed. You weren't first pick to win it. Maybe that's Al Ahly, maybe that's Sundowns. I get that reality. But in the moment, I'm like, come on. So for me, Jay, I do agree that if you do take a step back and you look at the entirety of the campaign, if you look at the individuals, look at the squad makeup, you should be proud. But those guys were good enough to be there. Quata was good enough to be there. Rele is good enough to play in and amongst that crowd, and so is Umbogaz. So I think if you prove yourself to be good enough, then you are part of Orlando Pirates. You're part of the teams that have made it this far. And so for me, Jay, it's disappointment, man. It's just, I can't shake that off because there are people that cheers against Lumsindo whilst they get beaten by Gallants because they're just happy that you lost. And yes, I get it. The haters will be there, but we were so close, and that's what hurts for me, Jay. We were so close to making it a South African final.
My thinking is always this, Chuck, that if you gave a team a certain result at the start of the season, how do you feel about that? And if I offered Pirates a Champions League semi-final spot in and amongst the season that they're having, I think they'd take that. It's the same thing I go back to with Kaizer Chiefs when they bottled the league, right? On the last day, that coming from 9th in the previous season under Compella and then getting to second place, 2 points off the top of the log. If you gave Chiefs that at the start of that season, would they have taken it? For sure. The way it went, of course, expectations shifted, and then there was, in the moment, the hurt. So I understand, Chuck. I understand. I've been there with Widad.
Yeah.
So I understand.
So having been there yourself, as you account, Jay, with Widad and with all the other times Sundowns came close and were knocked out in the semi-finals, you've eventually gotten yourself to the final or one more game to then get your second start because as we discussed heavily on this topic, on this podcast about this topic, that at Mamelodi Sundowns, the mandate is to get the Champions League. It's not to go deep like Paris. There's no pride if Sundowns were knocked out by Al Ahly. They were 2 minutes away from firing probably Cardoso because he wouldn't have met the KPI. But they're now in the final, Jay. And with what they were looking for, having then switched out Urulani, who was replaced by Mangoba, and having then assessed the situation, which is not quite good enough, they got Cardoso, coach of Esperance, who knocked out Sundowns. They're now in the final, Jay. Does this therefore suggest that there's method to the madness? Because I didn't understand it. Does it justify the hiring of Cardoso, which now Sundowns are in the final? Does it make sense to you, Jay?
He must win it still.
Yeah.
Winning is the only thing that's going to justify Cardoso being hired by Sundowns, right? Being there. And the reason I say that, Chuck, and it sounds like a very high bar. Number one, as I've kept on saying, that's the bar that has been suggested, has been set by Mamelodi Sundowns when they parted ways with Rulani, right? Because yes, he won the league, and yes, he got to the final of the Nedbank Cup, was beaten in that one, and then was eliminated 2 seasons in a row in the Champions League semi-finals. And it seemed from Sundowns, the messaging was, that's not good enough, right? You can do whatever else you do in the other competitions and in this competition, the Champions League itself. But if you don't win it, ultimately you have failed to meet our expectations for our coach. The thing is, though, right? Cardoso has taken Sundowns to the final, which is the first time they've even made a final since winning the Champions League back in 2016, which means that he has performed better than anyone who's come after Pito in the job for Sundowns in that particular competition. But the reason he needs to win it, Chuck, is because number one, that's why he's here. Number two, I'm curious about the culture at Sundowns. The thing with Rulani, and when I been asked the question over the course of the season that would I still take Rulani back or how do I feel about that, the reason I felt that it was a mistake is because you were set for a decade with Rulani. You were absolutely set for the decade because he's been through development structures there as a coach. He's been there as an assistant. He's gone away. He's come back. He's been part of a coaching trio, and then he was the coach by himself. We also know that he is tactically elite, right? So wherever football is going, wherever football is, Rulani is keeping up with that. And the institution that is Mamelodi Sundowns, who continue to do that behind the scenes in the boardrooms, the man who matches that in terms of the coach was Rulani. So it isn't that there are more superior minds on the continent or beyond where Sundowns are concerned. So now you've got those two things. You've got someone who has the fabric of the club ingrained in him, and he also gives you what you're looking for in terms of a tactical. And when I think about as well what I saw in the under 17 AFCON with Umarilets, the 16-year-old who plays in the heart of the midfield for Amachimbos. He's a Sundowns boy, right? And you know for a fact that there's a clear pathway to get to the first team if Rulani is still in charge because he's overseeing everything. So the health of the club, as I'm saying, was much better because you know the man who is at the helm that it's not just a job, right? He's great at the job as well. And eventually my feeling is that he was going to win the Champions League, right? So when you go away from that, which is we are moving away from our culture because we've gone from Pizzo to the Three Wise Men to Rulani, which was continuity, which was also like the success, and you are forecasting that the success is going to continue, and you're not alienating the fans as well because there's familiarity with the people who are running the club or the coaches on the sidelines. So when you go to a mercenary, which is what the coaches who come onto the continent are essentially, right? The behavior that we've seen from the North African teams that if you don't win the Champions League, you're out of there. Al-Akhli Fayed Kola, their coach, even after he's won 11 titles in 3 seasons, where he's been a Champions League winning coach, because that's not good enough. They're
not even factoring the fact that it was a last-minute upset.
Doesn't
they
matter.
were in control.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's like, okay, and if you're going to behave like that, that means you've got no attachment to the man beyond his job. So that's why I say, Chuck, that he has to win, because if he doesn't win, do you continue with him, and up to when, right? Do you say, well, you've gotten to the final, we give you a chance to win the Champions League, and if he doesn't, what do you do in that point? Because what would be your justification for keeping him? Would he even want to stay? When Upobi was saying what he was saying when he had a little something in his system that Rivero came here with an empty CV, now he's used Pirates, I don't definitively believe that, but that is something that the coaches who come from abroad have done or do, they and to their credit, rightly so, because it's a job. You go where it is best suitable for you and your ambitions. Nothing against them, right? Where you arrive, you do what you do, and hopefully that raises your profile, and you go to what you deem to be a bigger and better place. What is to say that that is not what's going to happen with Cardoso? Because does he just love South Africa and Sundowns like that? He's always wanted to coach Sundowns? No, right? So because you went away from that, I think if you then go in the other direction where the only thing you're prioritizing is success will be success itself, which is winning the Champions League.
Yeah, the bar is crazy at Sundowns. It's probably almost at Al-Akhli level, because if he had fallen...
That's what they've done. And that's what I feel they've done by going away from Rulani and then from Mangoba, right?
Yeah.
To then a Cardoso.
I feel that you're almost the same ship. it's red underneath, but it's painted yellow. Because then the expectations are very high to the point where, I mean, I sit here and I think to myself, well done to Caruso and the boys, right? But you qualified via own goal and you weren't really fashioning chances because I think maybe your squad is tired and you're not necessarily finding answers for your lack of goals at this point in time. Fine, that's a microcosm in terms of what he's overlooked in terms of his tenure at Sundowns. But I think if you gamble enough times and you keep getting to the semifinals as often as Mamelodi Sundowns do, eventually you'll get there. Is this not necessarily Cardoso being the guy who pushed them over, or would Mangoba have done that, or would Rulani have replicated that because he's done this so many times with the continuity of the same players? So I don't know, Jay, but I then leads me to my next point, which is that I do agree with you that he then has to win it because that will be the only difference with the other things. Because if you keep going, it's like what we feel with the Proteas, right? That they were chokers in the quarters, and then they get to the semis, then they get to the finals, like, but Anuna. Because there's not much differentiates you choking in the semis or in the final versus you choking every other time because there's no trophy. And if that's what the job requires, that you get a trophy, well, the final's not the trophy, is it? So you get to the trophy and that's what puts a stamp on vindicated, justified, here's the man for the job. Jay, I think anyone could have done it. Rulani would have done it. I don't think, as in hindsight, when I look back probably at what the season has looked like for Mamelodi Sundowns, Manga would have done similarly. I mean, he has to drop points against Polokwane City, but so did Caruso against Galaxy. So there were those upsets and those unexpected results concerning Sundowns. Yes, they played Al Ahly and played Esperance before. There were games where you thought Sundowns should be comfortable. They weren't comfortable. So there were hiccups here and there. But also, I think what Caruso was lamenting is what's actually happening and what we're actually seeing in the game. That there is fatigue. Tebogo Mokoena did not look his regular self. So did Ailende, Ribeiro as well. So you're looking at the team overall and you're like, you guys were quite lucky to get over the line. So Jay, it's justified, but there's no actual metric where we can prove what had it been someone else, it would have been different. So for as long as you're going to play musical chairs, when you finally do win, like here's why I was always arguing for the fact for continuity in the side, because if someone wins randomly, we can't say it's because of this and that. Because if they don't win the next season and they're out, are they suddenly bad? Has the team suddenly aged? So the metrics and the information that you gather when you're switching coaches and you're switching players all the time, you can't bank on that. You can't work on that and build something. So justified, I don't know. But I think the only thing to do now is to win it. And when he does win it, nothing is going to come from my side because he would have won the actual trophy. But at this point in time, I think Mangoba could have done it. I think Rulani could have done it. But congrats to Caruso.
Yeah, winning the Champions League ends all debates because you've done the job.
Yeah.
Chuck, a team that is much debated about still, Kaizer Chiefs. Another loss over the weekend. And the question is always players and coaches, and mostly this season it's been around the players, that once again Chiefs needs an overhaul of players. And in the spirit of that, right, want to take a look at the squad that Kaizer Chiefs have as we're nearing the end of the season. I asked the question, which of these players should be kept and which of these players should Kaizer Chiefs part ways with in our game of keep or sell, right? And beginning with the goalkeepers. And of course, we know Fierce Ntwari who joined the season, Bruce Vuma, who's playing right now, and Brandon Peterson, who played last season, but we haven't seen much of him this season. Of those three goalkeepers, who stays and who should be sold?
I think you keep Bruce because he's the one getting the game time. Meaning that of the people that he's then usurped, no one is pushing him. I mean, there are goals where he could have done better, like throughout this campaign, where you're like, if only you were better positioned, or if there was a full dive, you'd have saved that. But Peterson had a howl, and he was given chance after chance, and he just never got his confidence back. And since then, was let go. Ntwari, no, he just wasn't the replacement. They tried to back him, but mistake after mistake as well. So you keep with the guy who's been there the longest, the guy who's currently in the number one seat.
I've supported Vuma, right? Before they signed Ntwari, I vouched for Bruce Vuma because I felt he hadn't really done anything wrong to lose his place. But I keep Ntwari because they just signed him at the start of the season. I think you give him another season, take a look at him. I part ways with Vuma and Peterson, because with the game time that Vuma has gotten, there's just so many mistakes that keep coming in, and I don't feel secure with him as the goalkeeper. If I was a centre back playing in front of him, I wouldn't feel secure. And then with Peterson, like just that action of what he did on the sidelines with the coach, like that has left like a terrible taste in my mouth. And I can't imagine that he's great for the squad. So I'd part ways with him. So those goalkeepers, I'd keep Ntwari. And then in terms of the defenders, Chuck, you've got Spiwe Msimango, you've got Edmilson Dove, Rushuin Totli is out with an injury at the moment, Zita Quinica, and you've got Ignacio Miguel and Bradley Cross.
Cross has found himself out of his depth quite quickly. He looked good in the first couple of games, and that's really it. Since then, he's failed to actually prove that he belongs to be in a Kaizer Chiefs team that's under so much pressure, because there are mistakes, there's exposure in terms of his positioning and how he reads the game. So, yeah, you can gamble and keep him if you want, but I've seen enough. Msimang, I think, has stepped up, but that's because of injuries, right? So I wonder to myself, I think after De Klokwe has left, you don't want to be thin at centre back, right? So you keep with De Klokwe for that reason. Not De Klokwe, Msimang for that reason. Miguel, yes, I think is a good leader. He takes the penalties and he's given them a bit of bite, and he's vocal, and I think he's a good leader there at the back. Utotli as well. Started very well. Even got himself a Bafana call-up, was playing for Bafana, and then injuries came, right? So I think he's good enough to be there. Still has some way to go in terms of development, but he's someone you stick with. The other names that you read was Quinica. I saw him the one time against Sundowns. Not too bad, but overall, no, man. I don't think Quinica's your guy anymore. I think his time has come and gone. You sell Quinica as well. Who am I missing out on?
So I did exclude some defenders. So it's Bradley Cross, Bongani Sam, Happy Mashiani, Reef Frosler, Dylan Solomons.
I think Frosler is solid. I tend to like Frosler when he's playing. Solomons is good for going forward, but not with what Chiefs look like at the moment, because you want to be solid at the back. You don't want too many forwards into the front up until you get your game right? So when Nabi is cooking and everything goes well, you'd have the luxury of Solomons on your team, and you can play very well. But without that, no. Mashiane is a curious one for me because he hasn't gotten that much game time. But when he has come, I've liked Mashiane when I've seen him play. Yes, there was a game when you're like, happy that wasn't necessarily good.
Mashiane has gotten his chances.
I know.
And the thing is, with the state of the left back position at Kaizer Chiefs, he should have cemented his place over there.
Yeah, but the thing is,
enough.
That's true, right?
Can I ask you this question? How old do you think Mashiane is?
Isn't he like 26 at this point?
He's 27. I thought Mashiane was like still 23, 24. And I realized he's 27. There's a lot of time that she's already invested in him. And unfortunately, it hasn't paid off. I think, he's good enough to continue playing the PSL, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of where Kaizer Chiefs want to end up, nah.
Nah, man. I think it gives that stability. For the way they want to play, the composure on the ball, he's the guy. And I know we're speaking about individual players in a team that's not playing particularly well, so obviously there will be cracks. But I'd gamble. If there's someone who's been there for a long time that I still want to stay, I'd gamble on Happy Mashiane.
Yeah, I'm keeping all those defenders, except for Mashiane, as I did mention.
All of them?
Except for Mashiane. Wait,
yeah.
I'm not that. Except for Mashiane, who I did mention. I'd also part ways with Bradley Cross. I've seen enough. This one season, I've seen enough. Reef Flosler and Dylan Solomons, I don't know. I feel like Chiefs need to start over in the right back position, because it's been Frosler or Solomons or Njabulo Plom when he's been a Kaizer Chiefs player. Sometimes you've had Okunika play as right back, and that position is one that they haven't settled on. So I'd keep Frosler as a backup. I'd get rid of anybody else, Solomons included, and then you need to go and buy a right back who's going to be the starting right back going forward. And then we go into midfield, Chuck, and we've got Usbong Senim Teto, Ox, Yusuf Mart, the captain. Edson Castillo, you've got Samgelo Zwani, you've got Thabo Cele, you've got Nkosing Pile Ngobo. Of those, who stays, who goes?
I've tried to defend Mart as much as I can, but yeah. I think he falls into that same camp of players that you think have got enough chances. Abo Mashia and Abo Solomon, Abo Bruce Vuma as well. I think Umar doesn't give them anything special. He's solid, but you need more than that, right? That's why when Thabo Cele came in, it was so refreshing. It was like, this is what we've been looking for the whole time. So Thabo Cele stays for sure. Castillo, I would have loved to see more of him this season, except Uti injuries robbed us.
Yeah, he's been injured, eh?
Yeah, but I think if he was there, he would have given them so much more, and he would have been a difference maker. So Castillo definitely stays. Still a new signing, you definitely keep him. Ungcobo, I think, he's been on and off. Also injury hits, but I think he's someone you can play. I think he's dependable as well. Oh, please run the first two names again because I thought to myself, no. I said Mart, no. Ox, no. You want some bites, but for me...
Yeah, so the only person that you are missing is Samkelo's one.
Okay, one I think you keep. There's a bit of work that needs to be done in terms of how we can impact and give you more energy on the game, but the quality is there, right? And it's a matter of extracting that responsibly and him reading the game. And so now I can do the back heel. Now I can do the flashy things. Now I can play the Hollywood pass. Or this game does not need any Hollywood passes. Just keep it simple. So he needs to learn those parts of his game, but the talent is definitely there. So you gamble on that and hopefully it pays off, right? So Ox there, I think they've tried, but it's very limited for Kaizer Chiefs. He's not going to help them going forward. So Ox out, Mart out, and I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone.
No, that is everybody. And
Cool.
I agree with that as well. I think as much as they chased Ox for as long as they did, he's not the guy. He's not the solution there. Mart as well. He's just never really lived up to what we saw when I was at Skukune as captain as well, and the other players as well. I keep Ungcobo. Maybe you send Ungcobo out on loan because I think he needs to play more. But I like his game. It's different. He's not very athletic, but he's got an eye for a pass, and maybe you think of him as a luxury player, but I still do think that you can get something from him. And we've seen him be more industrious this season. I've seen him work a little more. We've seen him work off the field as well to get slimmer and get himself in playing shape. So I like that, right? And so and I like the player, so I'd keep him Shini as well. And then in terms of the midfielders, but more in a more attacking sense, right? So you're attacking midfielders. You've got Umtu Shabalala, you've got Mfundo Vilagazi, you've got Uhlonolo Matlo, and yes, let's go with those three.
Keep. Matlo hasn't been as consistent. But I mean, with the displays, I mean, Obrigado is being phased in more and more. He's playing more games as the time goes. They're being patient with him, and that's why there's no issues with him being available for the under 20s because he's just available because not playing as often as Abombokazi, Tiwani. But I think keep him is one for the future. I think the confidence on the ball, and when the things do come off, you see the talent. You're like, okay, this is what the hype is about, right? Umtu still needs to refine his game to go up another level, Jay, because I don't think Guti Orel is that much better. But when you look at their seasons, he looks like he's that much better of a player. But in seasons prior, I've seen him play better for Chiefs, and I think if he gets to those levels with support around him, he's going to be a very good ace in that pack. Umatlo, I think he's got some stability. He's not as offensive as those two, but I think he'll give you something solid because sometimes you need a utility player who'll keep things the same and give you shape. So keep all three.
I'd keep all three as well. I wonder about Matlo though. Rather, I wonder about one of the three because in thinking of raising the floor at Kaizer Chiefs, you're thinking that the signings you need to make are guys who are able to go straight into the starting lineup. And when you think about those three attacking midfielders, not one of them has really locked down the position whereby you think of them as maybe a national team player. You know, that if you're bringing somebody in that position, they're definitely going to be sitting behind them because that guy, like you think of Tabakele, he's got his name cemented in the starting lineup, and I wonder if you can carry all three. So if there is somebody who's being brought in who is better, and by better maybe also it's a question of just being at a more advanced stage of development than M2, because I also like M2, and seeing Vilagaz with the under 20s is a reminder that Vilagaz is actually very good, you know. So I think if you have to ship one, it would be Matlo because previously he's had his injury problems, and you think that there is a greater future in investing in the other two. But if there's no 10 coming in, I keep all three as well. And then in terms of a more attacking sense, the wingers and then the forwards, Chuck, we've got Pulemori, you've got Gaston Sereno, Teboho Potsani, you've got Maccabi Lepo, you've got Ashley Dupree, of course, and you have Tashreeq Morris, recently signed, and Wandile Duba, as well as Oranga Chivaviro.
Ranga out, Morris
I don't
out.
know you're going to start there. not even a consideration. Hey, Ranga Wadan to course.
It just hasn't worked. We've given him time. We've tried to play all sorts of styles doesn't quite help. Outside the box, doesn't quite control the ball. In the box, his finishing is woeful. Ranga out, Botsane out as well. Duprea at some point, yeah, he's got the speed, but what do you get after that, right? Duprea out because the whole point is to raise the ceiling and to make the team better. Gaston Sereno, you keep him better, but you keep him because he makes the attacking line better. But you have to speak to him because sometimes I feel that in this team,
to him. He is who he is at this point.
Yeah, because it feels
like
he's
going to continue acting that way, which is toxic for the team.
And it's not hard to see, Jay. Whether you're in the stadium, you see it. Whether you're watching on TV, you see that he does not trust the players around him because the best option is him. And yeah, sometimes that's a deterrent.
And then he's got the attitude. Right?
Yeah,
he's fighting refs, or he's when his blood boils a bit, like he's doing things he's not supposed to be doing, like rash tackles or pushing other players, and you feel like you're always on the edge of playing with 10 men because of his temper.
You know, to add to that, then I'd say this. If they're signing players and they get better players around him, then you can let him go because it's an attitude that you don't need. But for as long as you've got the players you have, you need him sometimes because he brings that quality. And so as a result, you take all the other nonsense that he brings to the table. Modi, I like the industry, but he's also in the same boat as Dupre sometimes. You get into the positions, you get into the build-ups, but when it counts, you don't have the right pass, you don't have the right finish. So in raising the ceiling, you have to be ruthless sometimes. I think this is a ruthless call. Modi out as well.
Wow, Modi has been Chiefs' best player in 2025.
If you want to raise the ceiling,
but he's 32.
You see, that's another. How much more can he give you when he's looked this way? Because best, Jay, yes, he's their best player, but what does he look like compared to everyone else in the league? There are better players who can do a bit more, I think, in that jersey. Sullivan, Jay.
You got Duba.
Duba, yeah, definitely keep.
And Tashreeq Morris. Yeah, I agree with that, Chuck. And where Modi is the one that I was hung up on because, as I'm saying, I feel has been Chiefs' best player in 2025, and yet the coach has sometimes just made the decision not to play him, even though he's the most informed player in the team, right? But at 32, I think you can still get a fee for him in the PSL. He's still got some years in him left, and if he was 25, it's a totally different conversation we're having, right? And I think he's got some value, and I imagine Chiefs would want to offload some players, get some money in for them before they make other transfers, and then the rest of the other forwards and wingers in terms of keeping them and letting them go. Fully agree with you.
Nabi must be sold as well. But we'll see how that team shapes up and see what they've put together. But someone who's come in new in the jobs, Arne Slot, gone all the way to lift the Premier League title, Jay. And Mo Salah says this one feels a little bit more special because he's won the Premier League title for the second time without Jurgen Klopp, without a Sadio Mane, without a Bobby Firmino. Just this one is better. Jay, are those words true, or do you think it's just him feeling the joys and the emotions of the moment?
I think Mo Salah is a prisoner of the moment. That 1920 season was magical for so many reasons, right? To begin with, the run that they went on, they went like 27-1.
At that point, the league was gone. At that point, the league was gone.
It was gone, right? By the time we took a break for COVID, and rightly so, the Liverpool fans were concerned that the league was going to get called off because no ways after so long, and we are this dominant and clearly are going to win the league, are you going to say that it doesn't count? And the fact, Chuck, of where they came from to win that Premier League title. Think about an Arsenal this season, right? Who seemingly ran out of steam amongst other issues that happened. After 2 seasons of chasing a Manchester City, Liverpool were in that position where the previous season, 97 points, and you don't win the league. Like that for me, Chuck, is a place where you have a built-in excuse that mentally we are short. We cannot go on and do it. Because if you remember in January, I believe, of that season, when they went to the Etihad, they had an opportunity. If they won that game, they go 10 points ahead, right? They didn't. And then Manchester City went on the run that they do at the end of the season, and they pipped them, ultimately getting 99 points. So what happens following that? Yes, they won the Champions League, but then, as I'm saying, there's fatigue there, right? There are scars there in terms of what do we need to do? And the conversation, as you've said before, well, maybe what you need to do is get 100 points. And lo and behold, Jurgen Klopp turns up with his team the following season, and they were well on their way to get 100 points or more. But they were winning it at a canter, so it slowed down towards the end. But they came back, and they did exactly what they needed to do. They were absolutely relentless in that season, and it was a magical season. That was one of the most impressive Premier League teams I've ever seen. I still maintain that Bayern Munich going on to win the Champions League in that season with Flick, and even though they beat Barcelona 8-2 in the bubble, I still think they were fortunate and have Cholo to thank for knocking Liverpool out for them, because that team was on fire, Chuck. They were cooking with gasoline, man. So as well as Liverpool have done under Arne Slot, and I know what Mo Salah is referencing, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, as things look right now, there was an all-star cast. It feels like, at least, there was an all-star cast, the one that won it in 1920 versus this team were coming into the season, and how last season ended, you wondered them not making any signings, really just literally bringing in Kaizer. That's basically all they did. What are they going to do this season? After that emotional roller coaster of Jurgen Klopp leaving and going with a Arne Slot, what do we expect from him? The last time we saw a big move for a manager coming from the Netherlands to England, we know what happened, right? So, like, what did you believe you had? And for him and them to go and win it the way that they did is very impressive. Like, it is very impressive. But the how strong that team was in 1920, the way that they got out of the gate and just never stopped going. And also the fact that it was that league title that they've been searching for 30 years. This one doesn't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, not too many episodes where we agree on just about everything that's on the table. But I think I agree with you, Jay, because it feels like it was a harder job, because you look to the left, there's Luis Diaz, and you're like, not really a best season. You look to the right, there's Darwin Núñez. You look that one way, there's Diogo Jota, always injured. You look behind you, there's the Hungarian, who hasn't quite hit form again. You're like, how are we winning this league? And yet you're still on top of the league, right? But number one, Jay, in 1920, that's when legends were made. That's what I believe, that whatever you believe about Jurgen Klopp or Firmino or Sadio Mane and their goals numbers, up until that point, they were great players. But when they won the league, you were like, okay, they were amazing. Because not only they run, but the fact that they actually converted, because so many times they came close to City. And for me, Jay, what makes it special in 1920 is the competition that you were facing directly. Because you don't just take it from City, Jay. You have to go on a magical run like you described it. You have to do something unbelievable, because by Christmas we were like, man, we thought City were dominant, but what is this? We didn't have those questions in this campaign. And yes, Arsenal were chasing, they ran out of steam, but it didn't quite feel like vintage Arsenal, is my argument. Had it been Arsenal from two seasons prior, or even another season before that, then you're like, this is a special league, because they would have had to hit 90 plus to take that from Arsenal. So because obviously points tally speak, they say something in terms of the narrative of the league title. But I think, Jay, it wasn't that difficult in terms of getting that. It's special because it's the manager's first season and he's won that. It's special because it's not quite that same team, because Sadio Mane was magical, because there were arguments that who's the better player between Sadio Mane and Mo Salah. There were legit arguments because Sadio Mane was that good. Hence, he goes to Bayern Munich. Bobby Firmino is not your typical number 9, but the magic he created, it was at 9.5 basically. And they were a magical trio. Then you've got your Fabinhos, you've got your Hendersons, you've got people who became legends and who grew up in the institution, fighting and battling City throughout the entire way, till they actually get it to the point where they win the league themselves. So it does not feel, it's not even close for me, Jay. I get what it means. Winning the league again under different circumstances does feel sweet in different ways, but it's no way and by no means any better, because that team, Jay, that's the team you put up when you're talking about 10 greatest league sides to have won the league. That 1920 season team definitely goes up there with a shout. So I think Mo Salah, as you said initially, is a prisoner of the moment, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's not whether which of the teams was better, right?
Yeah.
I think we can agree 1920 was better, but the narrative of how special of the winning of that league is, we both agree as well. It's still 1920, even from that perspective. The perspective that Liverpool now occupy, Chuck, in the hierarchy of English teams is that they are back on the perch, right next to Manchester United, having won a 20th, equaling Manchester United, of course, league title. And Gary Neville of Manchester United Law says that the debate is over. Liverpool now, clearly, the best team in England.
Never. Gary's been beaten to submission. All these victories by Jurgen Klopp and his men have made him just, and obviously on the other side, the woeful continued run by Man United has just made him believe that there's nothing there at Man United to call them great. But we're still great, Jay. We can still attract the Antonys, the Harry Maguires. But Jay, in terms of, I think it goes back to the argument that we had when we were speaking about how good it is for Kaizer Chiefs to be back in Africa, right? Which are comments said by Patrice Motsepe, because they are that big a team. I don't think Liverpool have usurped United. I think United are still the biggest team. The number 20, we got there first. You've just joined us where we've been for a long time. I think financially we're still about financial fair play, but we're still a big powerhouse. I think when you look at the plans to build the circus, Sir Jim Ratcliffe believes that because we're the biggest team in England and we're the most recognized probably globally, we need to build a circus, because that invasion of the stadium was a stadium and more. There's also a coffee shop here. There's also a pond here. The train will go past here because it has to reflect who we are. I don't think that has changed. Liverpool have gotten closer. Yes, they've got more European success. Yes, they've got better pedigree. Yes, they've gone on a better run in the last 10 years. But big is big, Jay. You don't just change and become small overnight or get used. That title doesn't switch hands overnight. I don't care who you are. I don't care what. I mean, that's why the Etihad is still the Etihad, because they are in the same city, unfortunately. You can bring a Pep Guardiola, a Haaland, but you are right next to Manchester United. Therefore, you'll never get to be as big as you want to be, because right next to you is Man United. And right next to Liverpool on that perch of 20 league titles is Man United. And for that reason, it won't change hands. Not anytime soon.
This is sad. This is sad. You know, when fans talk about their teams being big, they tend to bring this up when their teams are doing nothing on the field, right? And I just heard you talk about the circus of the stadium. I just heard you talk about revenues. I just heard you talk about everything, but truly, really success. And yes, you brought it into the conversation at the end there with the 20. Globally, right? Manchester United are a bigger brand. Yes, if we're talking about marketing, if we're talking about branding, Manchester United are bigger. Manchester United sit at the same table as Real Madrid and a Barcelona. Maybe you can include a Bayern Munich in there, but probably those three by themselves at that table, right? But if we're talking about accolades in terms of things that are football related, with the outcomes from the games and the success and the trophy cabinet, and if that is the measure of the best and the biggest, it is Liverpool.
Yeah, we're talking about overall. We're including the trophies overall.
Chuck.
Because I'd argue, and you'd probably agree with me, that in fact you always say the Kaizer Chiefs is the biggest brand. It's the biggest team. Nah?
Yes.
Pirates are also bigger than Sundowns. But trophy cabinets, there's no comparison. You have to go back in the 80s to bring Kaizer Chiefs into the conversation. Like at the rate at which Sundowns dominate.
The number one team must be the team that has won the most. And when you think of a Liverpool, and so Liverpool have 20 league titles along with United tied on that one. They've got double the Champions League titles, 6-3. They've got 8 Carabao. Let's not count the Carabao. So we've got the FA Cup. They've got 10 FA Cup trophies to Manchester United's 13. Right?
Got more Carabao as well.
I don't think, no, you do not have more Carabao trophies. Liverpool hold the record for the most Carabao trophies. So
I query that one. Cool.
We'll look that up. If it's not Liverpool, it's Manchester City.
It's probably City.
It definitely is not Manchester United. And the things that count, like in terms of league titles, right there with you, the other title that you look at in terms of those very big clubs, the Champions League titles, conquering Europe. Double 6-3, and the margin between the FA Cups is minimal, and then they also have more Carabao Cups. It's Liverpool.
Jay, when you talk about double, if you're talking about like 20-40 sharp, but 6-3, come on, man. Because yes, they are big trophies, but Jay, if we think about it,
come on, man.
Like, we are big because
they have 6 European Cups. You've got 3.
The reason why the Big 6 was created is so that you can include teams like Liverpool. It's not about court right now. But
teams
in the
like Spurs
and Liverpool, because in the early 20s and in the 2010s, they were doing jack. We had to just say now, that's not game, because in all honesty, Liverpool, I was about to say they're like Newcastle. It's very disrespectful. But they were on that level in terms of not doing anything. You're a big name because they've had Stevie G for the longest time. Stevie G winning nothing for the Champions League.
10 years ago. When 10 years ago, if we're having this conversation, you are right. They did nothing up to that point. But in the last since Klopp came in the last 6 years, 7 years, whatever case may be, they've comfortably won more trophies than a Manchester United.
That's true. But what I'm saying is that you don't just change and be a smaller team. We've had Mourinho, we've had Sir Alex Ferguson, Jay, we've had Louis van Gaal. We've got credible names and managers. We've had your Paul Pogba. People come to our team because we're still a draw. We're still a big team, Jay. Regardless of not having success.
Say they come there to do what? They do nothing when they
to win. They just haven't, but they come to win.
But
we won the FA Cup.
The conversation is actually about the aggregate over their histories from the start. It's not just the last a couple of years and not just like the last 30 years. Their history versus history, the greater history belongs to Liverpool. And hence, that puts them at number one. It puts them at number one. They're the number one football brand in England. They're the number one football team in England, Chuck.
Please comment.
They've won more than everybody else, including Manchester United.
That's the team that you support to hop onto the bandwagon because it's a feel-good time. The Liverpools and the City of this time, but the big team is still Man United
as well. In the 90s, that's why Manchester.
No, but I'm saying now they're still big. They're still big,
Chuck,
and number one as well.
That's why, you and a whole lot of people support Manchester United because they were the dominant team when football went global with the Premier League. So that's not a thing to hold against people who support Liverpool.
But I'm saying it hasn't switched hands. It hasn't switched hands. Liverpool can win 25 league titles, Jay.
And it doesn't matter.
It's not going to shift. If you're big, you're big. We're still gonna dog.
It doesn't make Manchester United small. Doesn't make them small.
I'm not saying that it makes them small. What I'm saying is that it's not gonna just switch hands like that. Regardless of what Sundowns have done, nothing has changed. Regardless of how. That's why when Caruso was saying where are the fans, you're like Mamelodi 57, because that's the reality of that team.
Chuck,
you may go buy players in South America, but you're not Chiefs, you're not Sundowns, and that's just the facts. Because of how much you win.
England is Liverpool red, bro. England is Liverpool red.
Anyway, we move on to Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, who said, please jog my memory, I'm just thinking about what Pep said.
It was also about the FA Cup, having made it to the FA Cup final.
The question was, does this redeem your season? If you go to the final and you actually convert and you get a title after the shambolic season, if you have a cup at the end of it, as Manchester City, the dominant force over the past 5-6 seasons, does it save your season? And he says, nope. Jay, do you think that does save their season because it's some silverware, or do you think it's still nonsense?
Yeah, so it was also if it's a successful season, right? If they win the FA Cup, and it's a successful season. It's a successful season because, again, you play to win trophies, right? Now the question is it as successful as when you won the treble or winning league titles? No, it's not. That is for certain. But the thing is, success isn't binary. In a sense it is, in another sense it isn't. It is in the sense that what defines success for me is winning. But when I say it's not binary, what I mean is that it's just the league or the Champions League. It's on a scale, right? Where it's greater success if you win the treble, it's greater success if you win the league. But it's still success of a lesser nature. But it is still success, and for me, it is kind of dry like that. And I know what Pep is saying. That these are not our standards, and if that is the question, no, it's not their standards, right? It's not good enough from a Manchester City, but it is success because when we write the script or the narrative of the season, the eulogy, when you eulogize the season, what we're going to read is that Liverpool won the league title. We'll see who wins the Champions League. If it's not from England, it doesn't matter. If we'll say Newcastle won the Carabao, and then we'll say the FA Cup was won by Manchester City, one of the 3 cup winners locally in England. So it is a success. Not great, but it's a success nonetheless.
I agree with Pep. It's not a success. Because of the players that you have, the manager that you have, the team that you've built, the expectation that comes with Manchester City. Because if they win the FA Cup, it's FA Cup plus league, or Carabao plus league, or the one time when they got the treble, it was with the Champions League as well. Because they never just get that. When Man United do it, because they look so bad, it's like, yes, we did it. No one gave us a chance. We beat Manchester City. Okay, give them a big tick. You see,
big teams are winning league titles. Manchester United are going crazy over FA Cup. Now tell me they are number one. But back to what you were saying, Chuck.
Liverpool also went crazy when they thought their quadruple was on, but they just got one title.
They were disappointed when they ended up with the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. Chuck,
they were happy because
they were disappointed
because Akfad Nanex. But here's my point, Jay Uguti. it doesn't. I think it's like when they gave Dembele the man of the match award after that beating at Aston Villa. It didn't quite feel right. That I played well, but I don't want the credit because we lost. And I think that's what the FA Cup sort of mimics in terms of we got to some trophy, we got some success, but when we look back at our campaign, Champions League was shambolic. League were woeful, and they're trying to get to fourth place. They currently occupy fourth place. They might just qualify it again via those league standings. When you look back at it, you're like, it wasn't quite vintage. We weren't ourselves. I mean, it's one thing to get beaten by Liverpool, right, in the 1920s, like we said. We tried. Yeah, there's a couple of games we should have won, but we tried. We did our best. They were just a better team. This time, there's Arsenal who aren't great, but they were better than you. There's Liverpool, like we said, who aren't the best of champions, but they were better than you. There's the Forest who are better than you. Then you're in the argument with Newcastle now, Aston Villa, and you're not necessarily yourself.
They're not better than you in the FA Cup. Who you beat them in the FA Cup, in fact.
I don't know. I think it's got the same feeling as the more I mention Man United, I'm giving you ammo to against us. But I think, Jay, it's not quite as celebrated because it doesn't lift the mood, is what I'm trying to get at. The entire time you're like, Pep Guardiola, what's going on with this losing run? Can you turn it around? And then there's players getting injured. There's form. Kevin De Bruyne is leaving. And then at the end, you get an FA Cup. It doesn't quite lift the mood. Whereas with most successes, when you get to that place where you're lifting the trophy, everyone is happy. Everyone's overjoyed. But with this one, I don't think it changes much. It'll be great for the history books, but in the moment, and I think when you look back at the season, I don't think it'll even pop in our heads. Pep Guardiola won the FA Cup in that season. We're like, they were woeful. So I think it doesn't change the narrative of the season.
Chuck, they're going to be in Wembley. There's going to be a sea of light blue, sky blue. There are going to be balloons, and there are going to be scarves, and there are going to be flags that are worn around waists if they win that trophy, right? And the thing about the FA Cup, you cannot win a treble without winning the FA Cup. So it means something. It means something.
The fans will be happy. I don't know about the team.
Yeah, they might not be happy. And yes, as I'm saying that, you can say it's not good enough, right? But it's successful. It's success because you will be one of 3 teams in England to have won anything of the however many teams that play there. If we're talking about the very Premier Division, of the 20 teams who started the Premier League season this season, Liverpool would have won something, Newcastle would have won another, and Manchester City would have been the winners of the FA Cup. So imagine
they don't cement their 4th place, and by winning the FA Cup, they go into the Europa League. Is that where they want to be? It hasn't changed much for their season, Jay. And I get it's a trophy. It is the FA Cup, part of the treble. But imagine they finish in 6th. And then they get a FA Cup. It's about Europa League. I don't know. You don't look back and say, we're reaping the benefits of a great season last season because they're going to get Europa. It's not quite where they should be.
You've got something. You've got something. And we go into this season so we can leave, as Denzel said, with something. And we leave it right there on this episode of Two UpFront. Please do remember to like these videos, to comment, to share it far and wide. We absolutely appreciate the love, and please do help us to continue to grow and to bring you more of this content. And you can also continue the conversation with us on our social media pages. We are on every social media platform. You can find us at Two UpFront Pod. You can find me at J_Mzulu, and you can find Chuck at Chuck2up. From myself, Jay, I'm outie.
Arguments.
Like pirates, I'm outie.
I'm not going to add to that. Bye.